Well, welcome back. This is the final panel session of today's MENA Project Summit 2021. And really, it's the hottest of hot topics. We're going to look at the increasing importance of decarbonisation and sustainability in project delivery. You know, governments in this region are really prioritising the increasing diversification of their energy sources, the reduction of carbon footprint to limit the impact of climate change on the world, and it really is changing the requirements from governments, but also the specifications for people who are designing and building projects in this region. So this is something that everybody involved in the project industry needs to be on top of. And then from an investment point of view, investors are looking for projects and investment opportunities that have high ESG credentials, so environmental, social and governance credentials. So that's what we're here to talk about over the next hour. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by two leaders in their respective fields. So engineer Ahmad Alazemi is the energy and renewable energy specialist. Is an energy and renewable energy specialist based in Kuwait. Hi, Ahmad. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure. And we're also joined by Khdeir, who is the Regional Development Director for Mott MacDonald. Mott MacDonald, as I'm sure everybody knows, is one of the world's biggest multidisciplinary consultants. Khdeir, welcome. Thank you. It's good to see you again.
Good day. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, so now, as I said, this is really the number one topic right now for not just for projects, but for everything. So if you are involved in the projects industry in this region, you really should be getting involved in this conversation. You can send in your questions or comments using the comment tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Send in your questions to Khdeir or to Engineer Ahmad, and we will do our best to answer your questions as fully as we can. So I think the way I'm going to structure this conversation, gentlemen, is Khdeir, I'm going to start with you for some keynote comments on your thoughts about sustainability. And I think you'll probably talk more on the infrastructure side. And then Ahmad, will come to you for your keynote thoughts. And I suspect that you'll probably talk more on the energy and renewable energy side. So that's how we will split the sort of comments. But you can, of course, you can both comment on each other's observations as well. So Khdeir, let's start with you. Just what is going on in projects? How is the sustainability agenda or the decarbonisation agenda? How is that changing the project industry in this region?
Thank you, Richard. Assalamu alaikum. Good day, everybody. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. Let me start, Richard, by highlighting the growing threats and public concern related to climate change. So we are all living it nowadays, and that has led the leaders around the globe, the political and the business leaders, to take the responsibility to pursue sustainable social outcomes and totally aligned with SDGs, the Sustainable United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They realized that in order to retain the confidence of consumers, customers, and even the political leaders, the infrastructure needs to be sustainable, not only to meet the today's needs, but also not to compromise future generations. So that led to what we call the triple bottom line: people, planet, and prosperity, to be at the center of decision-making today, supported by the policy from government, but also the enhancement and the encouragement of the private sector to participate and have an active role. And finally, I would say on the transparency of environmental and the social, let's say, outcomes, it's becoming the norm now for regulators and for investors for reporting. However, if you want to look at it from the economy and the business perspective, each market segment or type of market might be or might have a different approach. So if we take the built environment, the built assets, where let's take shopping malls as an example. They, through the pandemic, each, I think, owner and investor in this domain, they kind of revisited their investment, and they are looking seriously how to repurpose their investment aligned from the environment point of view, but also from a business point of view. However, if you go to industrial type of clients, let's say high emitters of carbon, they started embarking on their net zero journey. So the approach might be a little bit different. However, it goes within the same direction. And another type, I would say, it's large infrastructure projects. I think we are fortunate in this part of the world that we still have large projects. And so we have the absolute opportunity to have the best resilient projects when it comes to large infrastructure, such as major tunnels, pumping stations, and the like. And last but not least, this all cannot go without having the digital as a common thread across all of them. I think the pandemic had pushed quite nicely everything, whether it's on the efficient side, how to make things more efficient, but also how to integrate and bring other experiences from other sectors to construction to make it more, let's say, more viable and addressing the major issue. And I'm more than happy to go in depth in each direction as you see suitable, Richard.
Well, thank you, Louis. That's a great summary of the situation. I mean, you're saying this is now a priority for governments, and different industries go in different types of projects. Come from slightly different directions. One thing that I think is interesting is, in probably anywhere in the world, but certainly what I've seen in this part of the world, is that when you talk about lowest price on a project tends to win the project rather than the long-term return on investment, whether it's about, just straight revenues or costs, or whether it's about decarbonisation. Do you think genuinely that we are going to see a change of behaviour where it won't just come when you're awarding contracts or selecting a design, it's not just going to be lowest price wins?
My sincere opinion at this point of time, price is still important, especially when it comes to government procurement. Private sector might be a little bit different. However, I think some government entities, they started realizing that looking more at the value rather than the price. But I see them as the exception rather than the norm at this point of time. So I think price is still an important factor for delivering projects at this point.
And so in that sort of process, I thought that to me, it seems like the major way that governments can affect change is through sort of policy changes, cutting subsidies on energy costs, or perhaps introducing carbon credits, or carbon tax, if you like. Do you anticipate that kind of thing? I mean, I guess we're getting into speculation territory, but do you think we can expect those kind of initiatives to try and accelerate this process?
I will answer it by a hope, honestly, Richard. We are living very exciting times nowadays, especially with UAE winning the COP28. So I think this would be a very good booster and a change going forward. So I hope at least it can start from ministries all the way to government, semi-owned entities as a start. And of course, the private sector will be encouraged more and more to participate. So I think there is a legitimate momentum now to drive it, but how fast, I think it differs from one country to the other.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, if any of you have questions for Louis on how sustainability and decarbonisation is changing projects, the way we plan and deliver projects, please send in the questions. Use the comment tab on the right-hand side of your screen to put in your questions. Thank you, Louis. I want to now move to Ahmad. Engineer Ahmad Alazemi is an energy and renewable energy specialist in Kuwait. So Ahmad, you presumably will talk about more from the energy perspective than from the infrastructure perspective. We have seen across the region governments increasing their targets for diversification and clean energy targets. Do you think that, how is that a permanent trend? How is that going to affect the sort of projects we plan and deliver?
Well, thank you, Richard. First of all, yes, you can see a serious plans and actions that we already have in the region here, specifically GCC countries. Let me give you just some simple examples about what's going on here. Starting from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia had a vision 2030, and part of this vision, you can see a new mega project that consists of line projects that is 100% renewable energy. You can see another example of this vision, 50%. The country Saudi Arabia is trying to reach by 2030 of clean energy. Another thing that the same country is looking for and planning for is to reach a net zero emission by 2060. When you see other countries in the GCC, for example, same idea in Kuwait. Kuwait right now on the final phase to sign with the transaction advisor to start designing the one of the biggest mixed technology renewable project that can reach 4 gigawatt. Same thing with the UAE. By 2050, they have a vision to reach a high amount of clean energy share. I'm with these like ideas and plans and actions. The plan before the actions need infrastructure, needs policies, needs executives and certain actions to build these ideas. Green initiative from Saudi Arabia, and this is one of the smartest initiatives in the region. You can see to grow millions of trees. The issue is not just to taking care of the renewable energy. This is beside the energy efficiency and electrification, is also growing the trees in the region. As you know, we are in the desert climate here, and this area is one of the most area that will have a negative impact from the climate change if the world didn't take action. So, in every part of the climate action, energy efficiency, renewable energy, electrification, even the green, growing the trees around the region. I believe the region is getting more serious to have actions to fight climate change.
Yeah. I wonder, Ahmed, I don't know if this is something you can comment on, but in the Gulf in particular, it's relatively small in terms of carbon footprint, compared to China or America or something. But per capita, it's got some of the highest levels of consumption and carbon emissions. So it seems to me that as well as building renewable energy capacity or planting trees, we have to get people to consume less in this part of the world. And that gets into some difficult questions about subsidies and things like that. What is your sense of, those kind of reforms? And, obviously in the past few years, those have been very difficult things to act on. Do you think we've reached a point where governments have to start cutting energy subsidies?
Well, Richard, that's a very good question regarding the consumption per capita in the region. Let's see theoretically and scientifically what is the main reason behind this high consumption. It's the air condition. It takes up to 70% of the consumption, and as you can see. You have been in the region here, especially in the GCC. You see how hot the climate is. The temperature can reach 55 around the area. Okay, one of the things that people realize, I have been. There was an event. Too many events I have joined before in a public place, malls, for example, about awareness of the consumption. And I have been seeing people, how do they react? They have a beautiful react regarding the consumption. They are aware how to conserve the electricity and water. But the thing is, the main thing behind this phenomena is the geographical reason, the climate reason. So I don't blame people. I blame the climate. And as the temperature raises year by year, let's say by 2050. It can be reached if we didn't take the world didn't take action. The region here will have the most negative impact with the climate. Yeah. That will cause the rise of the electricity and water consumption. So I know per capita it's very high, but the plan right now, as you can see in the region, there is an awareness plan, there is energy efficiency plan, how to develop the air conditions to consume less, plus the how to raise the renewable part. Once again, it's not just a region action. I know that. We consider it's a small area regarding comparing to the world, but it's a one-hand action. All the world, all the countries need to take a serious action, as the region right now is taking to fight climate change.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic comments, Ahmad. If any of you have questions for Louis or Ahmad, please submit the questions using the comment tab on the right-hand side of your screen, and I shall put those questions to the panelists. Louis, if I can just follow up on Ahmad's point there. So we were talking about consumption, and obviously we're in a hot part of the world. We're in the desert. People have to sort of have to have the air conditioning on. But do you think that that is going to, in terms of reducing energy consumption, we're going to see a greater push for green buildings, for more energy efficient buildings, that sort of thing? How do you see that changing?
Thank you, Richard. I think we need to split it in two parts. The first one is, let's say, the business part. So the creators of the assets, whether the current owners or the future owners of assets. So, and each one of them would need to address that in a certain way. It differs from one sector to the other, as I mentioned. Then you have the consumption part, which is the behavior part that Ahmad highlighted. It has a different mechanism, the awareness, the campaigns, the customer experience. This is becoming quite big across utilities, across shopping malls. So the engagement with customers and users and end users is extremely important to drive this change. But if you allow me, I can start maybe going in depth with maybe some of the common examples, I would say, that we started seeing. Let me pick up the decarbonization. I think you started your introduction with it. This is extremely important now, and many clients, they started thinking of it, but they are struggling a little bit how to go about it.
Yeah.
So each, let's say, the major emitters, let's start with these major industrial owners, etc. They started embarking into their net zero targets. So this ambition is obviously aligned with the nation ambition, whether it's UAE, Qatar, Saudi, etc., towards 2040, 50, or 60. It depends on the timeline. However, each one of them needs to come out with the strategy, and from that strategy, you come out with basically the implementation or the action plan. Now, when you start looking at it for implementation, you need to, the most important thing is to understand that vision. What is the vision of that client? What is the purpose of that project that they are trying to develop and deliver? The nature of these projects, they are like tens of years. They are not short 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years. And that's why you need to understand that vision quite clearly. Then the next complex step is the engagement of the stakeholders. You'll be surprised how complex this can be, because you will be including international stakeholders, local stakeholders, government entities, private sector, etc. So that by itself is a complex exercise, but it's extremely important to understand the outcome and how you plan accordingly. And once you understand all that, then you can work on the delivery. And because they are long-term projects, you can't have them as a one shot. So you need to have priorities. You need to have a phased approach. So let's say we are in 21, 25, 30, etc. You need to revisit that every few years and adjust accordingly. Now, the last part, I think also Ahmad mentioned it a little bit, is the offsetting. So the net zero ambition, you can go up to a certain limit, but from my point of view, you need to have a supplementary or supporting offsetting mechanism. So, for example, you do reforestation, whether it's in region or outside the region. This can give you up to around 4 CO2 tons per CO2 per hectare per year, or you can go maybe for mangroves. So, in a nutshell, you need to understand the vision, work on the strategy and the engagement of the stakeholders, make it a phased approach with the right priorities, with the offsetting mechanism. With all that, then the net zero journey or the roadmap can be visible to the decision maker to say, yes, we approve that. Let's do it for the next 5 years and revisit and adjust. Because you will see, for example, for high emitters, let's say energy, the major part, you might see hydrogen coming into play in the future, renewable. So how you adjust and include that more efficient solution so that they address the overall objective. So, and this differs from an industrial client to a municipality to other types of clients too.
I wonder, you know, in a recent webinar, I was speaking with Emirates Global Aluminium, you know, the big aluminium producer here in the UAE, and they were talking about the need to decarbonize their supply chain, because obviously their clients are, you know, car manufacturers who want to have cleaner, greener products. In construction and projects, do you anticipate that project clients, particularly government clients, will start to demand that their contractors or their consultants show how what their carbon footprint is, some sort of certification process for contractors or manufacturers or consultants? Do you think we might get to that situation?
Yeah, with some clients, I do. And some conversation with clients, you can pick up work where you can demonstrate you are ahead of others in this domain. So I understand, so the supply chain, for example, you mentioned in the global aluminum, they have massive supply chain globally, etc., and they have also customers. So it's quite complex. However, they have the opportunity to select. Maybe the pool is small today. However, you will see more players across the supply chain coming to it. And same would apply to construction, built assets or even infrastructure.
Yeah. So there could be, I suppose, ADNOC or Aramco or KPC, these companies have pre-qualified supply chains, don't they, where if you've got to have an in-country value score or a localization type, we could have that for decarbonization or carbon footprint, I suppose.
Yeah, it's part of, let's say, your CV. So when you go and present, it has to be there.
Now, Ahmad, if I can, sorry, Louis, if I can just put the same point to Ahmad, actually, from his experience in the energy sector, do you see, the utilities requiring their supply chains to have a greener carbon footprint?
Well, I believe yes. In this regard, the utility here will need even to reduce or develop the idea of producing energy. Let me give you some examples.
Sure.
In Kuwait, one of the examples that some of the plants, power plants, will decommission and rebuild to have a more energy efficient power plant. It's an idea that how to become, even with the conventional part of producing energy, how to reach the minimum amount of CO2 emission. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it seems to me that we're still at an early stage for some of the supply chain reform, maybe not in the manufacturing sector, but when you get into traditional projects, infrastructure or energy. But yeah, you've answered it very well. I have a question here, Ahmad. This has been submitted by Paul. Now, I don't know if you can answer this, but Paul says, are Middle East engineering companies monitoring the net zero energy projects in the UK for guidance? So I guess what Paul is saying, that there are some pilot projects or net zero energy projects in other countries. He mentions the UK. In Kuwait or elsewhere in the region, do we look outside and sort of benchmark against what's being done elsewhere?
Yeah, of course. For the companies, the private sector, perhaps Louis, maybe he's more into the private sector than me, but
okay.
Of the public side, I believe yes, they look not just the outside, they look even the inside. They see what dilemma that they have, what problems they have, how to develop their infrastructure, whether watching other examples, literature, reviewing the other areas, for example, like UK, other countries. They start from what other countries end.
Yeah.
In Kuwait, for example, one of the initiatives, they have residential incentives. How they support the residential sector if they conserve energy, and they give the residential sector discount on the electricity bill. So this becomes from studying what others have done before. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. And Louis, if I can put the same question to you about, engineering companies monitoring net zero projects in the UK or elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we are fortunate in this part of the world to attract so many international companies and to learn from. So for carbon management, there is an existing standard called PAS 2080, public available standard. This is for carbon management. And we are proud to say that we were the co-author of that globally. And we embarked on a journey with an existing client in UAE, where we have developed jointly with them their roadmap for carbon reduction. And in that roadmap, compared to business as usual, we had managed to have around 1/3 reduction over a 10-year period. So to answer your question directly, yes, we benefited from other regions, in this case, the UK. This has been implemented already in the region, in this case, UAE. And I would encourage even more clients to use that. And I'll be more than happy for anybody to reach out and to guide them and to direct them with the right teams to help them in that. So
okay,
yeah,
thank you.
It is happening.
Thank you. Now, Ahmad, you talked about the targets that countries have set for clean energy as a percentage of their overall energy mix. And over the past few years, 10 years, we've been seeing solar in the Gulf has been particularly getting all the focus. I'm wondering about the next sort of generation of renewables. I'm thinking here of waste to energy or of green hydrogen. What do you think do you think solar is still going to be the focus for the next decade and more, or do you think we're going to see an increasing diversity of energy sources?
That's a good question. Of course, yes. And the region they are focusing on the diversity of the renewable energy. Three technologies of renewable energy: photovoltaic, wind, and CSP, which are the most common technologies in the renewable, have been implemented in the region. The energy storage, like thermal storage, green hydrogen in the UAE, Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, they implemented a pilot for green hydrogen, and on upcoming projects right now, the diversity in the energy storage. Another example, whether something beside the thermal storage like batteries, or perhaps green hydrogen, if it becomes feasible in the upcoming 5 years, that will be totally under consideration. And as long as it is feasible, that's completely fine. But as you know, what happened during the COVID-19, that made an economic and feasibility dilemma, which is raising in the prices. But at the same time, it gives us a great lessons learned, and a great example to see the future, to see how, from the curfew, what happened in the world, how the reduction in the emission changes around us. Everyone have seen that. So this is a physical vision for the future that gave us in the region. So the diversity of the technologies of renewable, it's seriously under consideration, and they are watching all the examples, whether pilot or commercial scale, as long as it is feasible and workable, doable. That's completely fine, and I think they will be the region will be the one of the first areas in the world that can implement these technologies.
Well, my sense is that in this region, and maybe I'm thinking here of Saudi and the UAE a little bit more, but my sense is that this region is shifting from being a supplier of oil to trying to be a leader of future energy. So, you're getting investment from governments. And you mentioned green hydrogen in the Mohammed bin Rashid solar park just now. But I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what's going on in Kuwait. Is KPC getting into cleaner fuel or cleaner energy, or other government agencies investing in research? What sort of things are going on in Kuwait?
Well, in Kuwait, even the oil sector, they are trying to produce a cleaner energy for the new refinery right now, producing cleaner fuels. With the development of the refineries and how to have cleaner fuels, reducing more emissions instead of the old and conventional way of producing fuels. In Kuwait, the last example and the last project right now is the Azure Refinery, and it's a good example to read about. It's a very big project, and it can produce. It's same thing with the other countries in the region, like producing blue hydrogen. Right now, I think it becomes more attractive as long as it's cheaper than the green. These type of things that the oil sector will consider about regarding the producing the fuel.
Okay, thank you. Now, Louis, I have a question here from Asif. Asif says, do you see an appetite in the GCC to exploit or to reuse rainwater to achieve sustainability goals? Should we do some client education so as to employ some, I don't know what this is, SUDS technologies in the region, such as green walls and roofs, rain garden, green-looking soakaways, etc.? So I guess the question is just really about making more use of rainwater. I mean, there's not very much rainwater.
Thank you for the question. I think there are two parts here, Richard. There is one, how to deal with stormwater. Let's call it stormwater. And the other part is how to enhance the reuse. This is fundamental, a major problem over here in the Gulf. How to maximize the reuse, which is the treated sewage effluent, we call it. So let me talk a little bit about the first part, the stormwater. And unfortunately, we have seen some unfortunate events because of this sporadic rain and storms. The last one we lived was in our neighboring country, Oman. And this will continue. So governments, municipalities, public works authorities, etc., they are quite serious now about how to build the right resilient infrastructure. And this is basically, you're talking about the large tunnels, pumping stations, outfalls, etc. Now, although these are major projects and this can have a decent carbon footprint for it, however, you can also build them in a quite sustainable way where the outcome will be a great benefit, protection of flooding, protection of marine life, etc. Now, as for the project itself, you will have I'll give some few examples how you can make it sustainable as a project. So you can use, for example, the spoil out and give it to different municipalities. They can reuse it. You can use, for example, the backfilling. So you use the dredging for backfilling in certain areas. You can work with manufacturers. So, for example, the large TBM machines to use the most efficient machines. This will reduce a lot of the carbon footprint. And of course, technology. So advanced BIM can really work nicely about reduction of steel for formwork, etc. So as you can see, large projects producing the right resilient for the country or the city, but this can be done in a quite sustainable way. Now, for the reuse, I think there is a long way to go. If we maximize the reuse in our GCC countries, I think this will be a relatively quick win and a major impact on our society. Now, when you go to the existing assets, I touched earlier on the shopping malls.
Yeah.
So built environment, now they're looking seriously, do we need to build more? And there is a let's go to the fundamentals, Richard, over here. So the first question would be, if you want to plot with the reduction on a vertical axis and the project life cycle on a horizontal one, you can start by building nothing. So the owner, the asset owner or the investor might say, do I need this project from the beginning? And if they don't, then they can shelf it. No need to do it. And we have started seeing some clients doing that. Then you go to the next phase, which is, we call it build less. So yes, I need to have some sort of an asset, an addition, but I don't need to create a new shopping mall. In the past, a developer would build a shopping mall and then they learn a lot of lessons. And they would say, okay, my next shopping mall, I would like to cater all these lessons in it. Now it's not happening because they say, no, hold on. I need to revisit what I have and fix it. Then you go to the third level, which we call it build smart. So this is where using technology, the right, different materials, offsite engineering, this all goes into that play, or you can say the reuse. So you can use, for example, existing utilities, existing roads to enhance your asset. And then the last piece, we call it build efficient, which is using the new technologies of building and how to impact that. Now, we started seeing shopping malls doing a lot of repurposing. So an existing part of the mall that's not working properly, whether it's a food court or a major circulation area, rather than recreating a new let's say destiny, they are revisiting it and repurposing it with a new experience. So as you can see, it's a mix between major infrastructure investment from governments, like the large projects, and the current investors, especially for the built environment, how to repurpose their asset and get the maximum out of them. Now, for the other areas that he mentioned, some of them, they are in play, but not in a large scale. So you have maybe some good examples, but not enough to drive that change. From my point of view, the large infrastructure project that I described, water reuse is another area. These are important areas that we can potentially have an immediate quick wins going forward.
Excellent, thank you. Now, I have another question here from Josh, which I will put to you, Ahmad. So Josh says, and are you aware of any plans for legislation for business from the government that would encourage companies and projects to meet certain targets, for example, as achieving LEED certification on buildings? Josh says, and this is legislation regarding energy consumption, Josh says that he's noticed LEED certification is becoming quite a common requirement in Saudi Arabia. He wonders if it's the same elsewhere in the GCC. Ahmad, have you any insights into legislation to encourage energy consumption?
Well, if he's specifically talking about LEED, I think right now the Ministry of Electricity and Water and Renewable Energy in Kuwait is moving toward into the renewable and energy efficiency, which they are regulating the how to become a certified in a specific field, whether LEED, renewable, professional, any field of these area. That's so far what I know about his question. I hope I answered his question.
Yes, definitely. And Louis, can I put the same one to you? Are you aware of any legislation to reduce energy consumption? Any plans or even just gossip?
I think I would put it into positive campaigns. There are some campaigns from clients to push it, and it starts with, as everything else, it starts with awareness and education. So from my point of view, the driver of this change will not be the adults. They will be the ones at school. You start with the young. They are more, I would say, aware of the issue, and I think they will drive the change. So it's a long shot. However, you have some good examples.
Okay. I have another question here. This has been submitted by Bidanga. He says, attention on climate change is already high and rising. The real challenge is taking action that delivers cuts in greenhouse gases, and that means rewiring the incentives for consumer, governments and corporations to change their behavior and start decarbonizing. Can the panelists provide some additional examples from the MENA region of strategic approaches to creating incentives to change behavior and take action? Okay, so that's I'll start with you, Louis. Any examples of specific initiatives to encourage changing behavior?
I think the major challenge, Richard, over here is the availability of talents. So the world now started on this massive change globally. But when you start looking at the doers, the experts to implement and drive it, we have shortage. And in this region, it's not an exception. So I think the biggest challenge would be the talent and how to work with engineering firms, clients, etc., to drive it.
And what sort of talent do you mean? I mean, where is there a deficit on talent? Is it engineers? Or?
No, engineers you have abundance as always, but this you cannot approach this only by or through engineering thinking. You need to have the experts. Let's say, let me use the word as climate change experts, climate sustainability, resilience, all that kind of background and expertise, along with the engineering ingenuity to drive solutions. And whether we like it or not, the interest of the topic is not comparable to the standard engineering or conventional engineering. And that's why you have this gap. And now the world starting on the search of acquiring the right candidates to drive it, from clients, consultants, and even contractors. And it's going to take some time because there will be massive demand on them, and this will affect the way things will develop.
Okay. And Ahmad, if I can, I mean, the question that was submitted was about incentives. You know, what sort of things have you seen across the MENA region to encourage people to change behavior? But also, Louis just touched on challenges. So perhaps if I don't know if you can answer the first question and then go on to the second one, or just go straight.
Well, before I first, perhaps I have a small comment on Louis about the experts and engineers in the region. I think if we mean here for the experts in the countries, like citizens of the countries, or a private from the private sector. The private sector, I think, MacDonald, one of the experts that we have in the region. Other companies, too many other companies that we have. That's my small comment. For the question, one of the incentives. It's a good incentive that we have done. We have, as like most of you know, one of the main challenges that we have about the subsidies. The tariff is very cheap for the residential sector and other sectors, commercial. And at the same time, it's a very big challenge to play with the price and subsidies, whether you raise it or you reduce it. But this is not a smart way to think about raising the price or reducing the price. The smartest way to think how you convince the consumer to reduce the consumption. But Badanga, I think he's gonna like that. In Kuwait, we have done the residential incentive that I mentioned before. Okay, I don't care that your electricity right now is very cheap, but what I care about, if you save from your energy consumption, I will give you a double discount. Like, for example, if you save me $10, I will give you a $20 discount. It's a double incentive. And that not just the consumer saved just a matter of money for the consumer. No, it's a matter of the regulator or the government itself, who is saving from the oil consumption, reducing the CO2. So they saved more than they expect. So this is the concept about the incentives. Plus, and this is upcoming, and I believe they are on the final phase right now to finish. They are enhancing the residential sector and give them incentives if they install a PV rooftop. So it's not a mandatory, but it's optional. If you want to raise that discount up to 70%, then you have to install PV on your house. Plus, you don't get incentives just from installing solar. No, you have to conserve and save energy. Plus, you install solar so you can get up to 70%, and that creates a huge amount of people trying to ask questions and wondering. And it's the idea was very attractive. And if you took it in the way what the country is saving, it's feasible and they are saving. And at the same time, the residential sector, they install PV, it will be feasible for them with these discount and incentives that they are getting from the government.
Has that initiative launched already, and are people taking it up? Adopting, building rooftop solar.
Part of it, which is the energy conservation right now, and the other part, which is installing solar, it's on the finishing phase. I believe. I'm not sure when exactly, but let's say a couple of months. I would say it will be implemented, but very soon. I would say.
Very interesting. Now, Louis, Ahmed was just sort of came back at you with a quick question there about talent, where he makes a good point. There's plenty of, you can hire talent, the foreign companies, international companies, whatever. I presume you're talking about local talent, people building the skills locally to lead this new era.
It's beyond that, Richard. I was referring to global talents because
I see.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and we started seeing the waves coming from Glasgow and the change, etc. And we are on search of good talents in this field globally, and I'm sure others, they will be tapping on the same resources. Now, in the region, yes, we can help as an organization, and many others can do, but do we have enough to address? I think this is still a question mark to me. I think we need more of this.
Yeah. I don't know. I just wonder that we see. We've got COP28 coming to the UAE in 2 years, COP27 in Egypt next year. We've got the Saudi Green Initiative. We've got, all of these initiatives. But it strikes me that all of us have to change our behaviors more. And so the point that, we have to consume less. So Ahmad's examples there strike me as the correct way forward, to sort of actually get us to change. And I just wonder if enough is being done. Do you think enough is being done, Ahmad, across the region to get people to change?
Enough to done what exactly? Could you just clarify?
Well, I mean, to make people consume less, drive less, reduce energy and water consumption. Whether it's through educational initiatives or other incentive schemes.
This is one of the examples that Ahmad already mentioned, but other examples in the countries, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they have the same example. They have done it already. Qatar on the way, they will be done it. Yes, I think they have been done certain of things in the region, and they have too many more to be done in the future. This is not a magic stick that you can done it in a day. It's this a matter of time. It's a plan that needs a great work, especially and development, especially from what Luay has been mentioned. Yes, the experts in this field need to be raised and needed to be focused on to develop on the world, not just on the region.
Okay, thank you. Well, but that brings us to
Richard,
yes,
if I may just comment. I think if you want to drive this change, first of all, you need to give alternatives, whether to consumers and others. So if you want to drive, let's say, have people to use less cars, you need to have an efficient public system in place where they have this option to do it. So this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So that's quite good. But however, there's another, let me call it quick wins. So we have the digital options. So in our field, we have remote inspection, let's say, that we call it. So in COVID, traveling was almost impossible, but you need to do certain work by doing inspection overseas, etc. So we adopted a certain way of remote inspection services for our clients, and it works, and the outcome was good. So this is an example where you can use digital and the new way of working to drive efficiency and to drive the behavior. Now, if we go back to the original way of doing things, then we really did not do much. And this would lead to doing the same thing in a digital way. I'm not sure this is innovative. You need to think really different to be innovative and change the norm. So having alternatives is one, and using the digital or technology as two. This will drive gradually the change, I would say, going forward.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Now, we've come to the end of our allocated time, but there's one final comment from Paul. Paul was the person who submitted the question earlier about monitoring net zero energy projects in the UK. And I think it was Ahmad said there are monitoring projects in the region as well going on. Paul has said that NEOM is a great example of a project to look at for being an exemplar and monitoring some of these things. So thank you for that comment, Paul. Okay, that brings us to the end of the panel session. Luay, Khdeir, and engineer Ahmad Alazemi, thank you both very much for your time and your expertise. It's been a delight to talk with you both on this important topic. And thank you to everyone in the audience for being with us over the past hour and for the questions that you have submitted. That brings to a conclusion the MENA Project Summit 2021. I hope you have found it valuable throughout the morning, and I look forward to seeing you all sometime in the near future. Have a great day and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.